Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Oh my God, oh my God, verily I invoke thee and supplicate before thy threshold, asking thee that all thy mercies may descend upon these souls. Specialize them for thy favor and thy truth. O Lord, unite and bind together the hearts. Join in accord all the souls and exhilarate the spirits through the signs of thy sanctity and oneness. O Lord, make these faces radiant through the light of thy oneness. Strengthen the loins of thy servants in the service of thy kingdom. O Lord, thou possessor of infinite mercy, O Lord of forgiveness and pardon, forgive our sins, pardon our shortcomings, and cause us to turn to the kingdom of thy clemency, invoking the kingdom of might and power, humble at thy shrine and submissive before the glory of thine evidences. O Lord God, make us as waves of the sea, as flowers of the garden, united, agreed through the bounties of thy love. O Lord, dilate the breasts through the signs of thy oneness, and make all mankind as stars shining from the same height of glory, as perfect fruits growing upon thy tree of life. Verily, thou art the Almighty, the self-subsistent, the giver, the forgiven, the pardoner, the omniscient, the one creator. Prayer was written by Abdul Baha. Baruch Ata Adonai. Praises be to God. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey? Corey?
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, religion isn't just about faith in God, it's also about faith in humanity. It's this belief that humans really can change themselves, even if it's with God's help. That someone weak can become strong, someone sick can become healthy, a sinner can become a saint, and so on. And in the Baha'i faith, we believe that that kind of transformation isn't just something that can happen at the individual level, but also something that can and must happen at the level of our whole civilization. Here's one of Baha'u'llah's writings talking about that. One of his most famous writings that's frequently quoted by Baha'is, and which you'll see on posters and buttons and things like that. This is from Proclamation of Baha'u'llah. The great being, wishing to reveal the prerequisites of the peace and tranquility of the world and the advancement of its peoples, hath written, the time must come when the imperative necessity for the holding of a vast and all-embracing assemblage of men will be universally realized. The rulers and kings of the earth must needs attend it, and participating in its deliberations must consider such ways and means as will lay the foundation of the world's great peace amongst men. Such a peace demandeth that the great powers should resolve, for the sake of the tranquility of the peoples of the earth, to be fully reconciled among themselves. Should any king take up arms against another, all should unitedly arise and prevent him. If this be done, the nations of the world will no longer require any armaments except for the purpose of preserving the security of their realms and of maintaining internal order within their territories. This will ensure the peace and composure of every people, government, and nation. We fain would hope that the kings and rulers of the earth, the mirrors of the gracious and almighty name of God, may attain unto this station and shield mankind from the onslaught of tyranny. The day is approaching when all the peoples of the world will have adopted one universal language and one common script. When this is achieved, to whatsoever city a man may journey, it shall be as if he were entering his own home. These things are obligatory and absolutely essential. It is incumbent upon every man of insight and understanding to strive to translate that which has been written into reality and action. That one indeed is a man who today dedicated himself to the service of the entire human race. The great being saith, "Blessed and happy is he that ariseth to promote the best interests of the peoples and kindreds of the earth." In another passage he hath proclaimed, "It is not for him to pride himself who loveth his own country, but rather for him who loveth the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens." This passage is talking about what humanity as a whole needs to accomplish. But we know, just as with personal growth on the individual level, that it's often very difficult. It takes a lot of effort, and sometimes it only happens when we struggle and have calamity befall us. This is what our speaker tonight is going to be talking about, the difficulties that we've had moving towards this peace.
Thank you, Corey. Albors?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. I apologize for the echo in the background. I'm actually at work right now. That being said, though, I would like to go into the same introduction that I seem to always give whenever Dr. Nasser asks me to give the introduction to one of our very distinguished speakers, and herald some information about the Baha'i faith that those who are unfamiliar with might be a little bit surprised by. The Baha'i religion does not have any clergy. And one of the things that entails is that we don't have a group of people who go to seminary and learn about the holy writings as they stand, not as metaphorical, not as informational, but purely as what they are, right? In religions of the past, it was a very common thing that people would be lauded for their ability to memorize entire sections or entire holy works, purely because of the effort required and the knowledge and insight that it would give them, right? So for Islam, for example, right, in Islam, my mother is a Muslim, a person who memorizes the entirety of the Quran from cover to cover is referred to as Hafiz. They are, even among priests, they are treated with a level of dignity and respect beyond anything that a normal person, quote unquote normal, who's just gone to seminary for 12 years would be receiving. There's a reason for this. There's a reason for this. And Baha'is believe that the reason for this is because the word, the holy word, is very important. The word in general is extremely important. We believe that the word was half of the power of God. You know, the old adage goes that with two letters, God said be and it was, right? The word was with God and the word was God in the beginning, you know. That the holy word is the method by which God gives us any new dispensation. The revelation of various religions comes not necessarily through the founding of a church or the education of a number of priests, but with the revelation of a series of passages that people can look to and study for guidance. Baha'is also believe, and this is something unique to the Baha'is, that the word has been given as a gift to mankind, which separates us from the whole of creation. God gave us some of God's power. In the Tablet of Maqsood, Baha'u'llah says that no man of wisdom can demonstrate his knowledge save by means of words. This showeth the significance of the word as affirmed in all scriptures, whether of former times or more recently. For it is through potency and animating spirit that the people of the world have attained so eminent a position. This is why it is an honor for me to introduce to you an expert on the English word, Dr. John S. Hatcher, currently a professor emeritus in English literature at the University of South Florida, a guest lecturer in institutions of education so esteemed as to become known far and wide for their prestige as institutes of learning, right? The University of Michigan, McGill University in Canada, Emory University, Oxford University, and of course, Dr. Nasser's favorite, the University of Maryland. This is a man who has dedicated his life to the word. And he's not like the monks of previous dispensations, sitting in a seminary copying scriptures. And although that work is absolutely necessary and lauded, for our religion, we give a special praise to those who share the word with all of us. And so with that, and without much further ado, Dr. Hatcher, we're very interested in learning what words you want to share with us tonight. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen because the talk I'm going to give is a PowerPoint, or is my presenting of a PowerPoint, after which we will have questions and answers. This will take about 39 minutes. I'll try to read slowly, but you can follow me on your screen. Hold on 1 minute. All right. American Baha'is in the time of world peril.
Dr. Hatcher, let me interrupt you real fast here.
Yes.
We just need you to click the share button in order that we can see it.
Oh, you want to see it too?
There we go.
Okay, let me start over here. Slideshow from beginning. And there we go. American Baha'is in a time of world peril, subtitle, A Rocky Road to the Lesser Peace. This is, Baha'is are very much interested in history. The Baha'i writings almost require that we become students of history, because it is the Baha'i belief that history is the result of the force of God compelling us and impelling us forward. And we want to know where we are in the process of God's plan. How did we get here? What are the protagonists in our collective story and our history? Because the Baha'is have a very specific theory about that Baha'u'llah articulates as the as progressive revelation, a sequence of prophets, each one advancing us from era to era. And then these eras constitute cycles. So where does our story go from here? Where we are right now. So where are we? Where are we going? Will we have a happy ending? And what is the best path for us to get there? And what can we do now to help that trip go quickly and smoothly? And so we have terms in the Baha'i writings that describe these compartments or these portions of history. We have cycles, which is the largest sequence of events. So we have the Adamic cycle from the prophet Adam up until the time of the declaration of the Bab in 1844. That's one cycle. We have the Baha'i cycle, which began with the Bab in his declaration in 1844, and we're told will endure for 500,000 years. So we see a cycle is a very large amount of time in the progress of human history. Within that, we have eras, and an era is the period or the dispensation during which a particular manifestation reveals his writings and constructs the institutions of the religion. And then within that era, within the dispensation of a prophet, there are certain ages or periods. And so in the Baha'i era, the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, which will last at least 1,000 years, we have three ages. The heroic age, which has already passed. It began with the declaration of the Bab in 1844 and ended with the death of Abdul Baha in 1921. We have the formative age, which began with the inauguration of the institution of the guardianship in 1921. And we don't know when that will transition into the golden age, but we know that as I say, the era will last at least 1,000 years. So when these events will occur, we don't know. And that's really the talk tonight, is about when will the age we're in, this formative age, in which we're putting this system together that Baha'u'llah designed, when will it result in what is called the lesser peace? And then we have another term, a stage of establishment. I'll explain what that is later. And then finally, once the formative age establishes the lesser peace, we will have the golden age, or the most great peace. So let's see if we can clarify these terms and the history that intervenes between them. So just looking at it visually as a chart, we begin with the heroic age. We have begun the formative age. At some point, we will go to the golden age. And we want to know what are the processes by which we will reach the lesser peace. The lesser peace is exactly what was read and described by Koran in the Loy Mahsud. And that is a pact. Baha'u'llah said in his letters that he wrote to the major kings and rulers of the day that you can have the most great peace right now. And what is the most great peace? That will be where the world will have become one body politic, one federation of governments, and there will be a complete peace and security. He says you can have that right now if you will get together and form this pact that was described by Koran in his reading of the Loy Mahsud. But they did not. They rejected his letters. And so instead, he said, now that you've rejected that, then you can have the lesser peace. But that will come by difficulty, will come with great effort. And here are the things you must do to bring it about. Well, one thing before we go forward is, he said, as you also heard in the readings, the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. Notice that the tense here is present tense, not the earth will become one country. It already is. Now, what that means is that, as I understand it, that we have already become interconnected such that we are interdependent. And the pandemic is showing that to us more forcefully, perhaps, than anything ever has. But we need a body politic federation to bring that about. In the opening paragraph, or not the opening paragraph, in the promised day has come, Shoghi Effendi says that the ages of the past, the ages of infancy and childhood are gone, never again to return on this planet. While the great age, the consummation of all ages, which must signalize the coming of the age of the entire human race, is yet to come. The convulsions of this transitional and most turbulent period in the annals of humanity are the essential prerequisites and herald the inevitable approach of the age of ages, the time of the end, not the end of the earth, but the end of this growing into an age of maturity, of preparation, in which the folly and tumult of strife that has since the dawn of history blackened the annals of humankind will have been finally transmuted into the wisdom and the tranquility of an undisturbed, a universal and lasting peace, in which the discord and separation of the children of men will have given way to the worldwide reconciliation and the complete unification of the diverse elements that constitute human society. So, what is that path that will lead us to the lesser peace? What do we have to do now that we have rejected the most great peace, or rejected it as an easy thing? We have the pact that was described also in that reading from the Loy Maksud, but it's described as well by Abdul Baha in a book he published in 1875. And he said, true civilization will unfurl its banners in the midmost heart of the world whenever a certain number of its distinguished and high-minded sovereigns, the shining exemplars of devotion and determination, shall, for the good and happiness of all mankind, arise with firm resolve and clear vision to establish the cause of universal peace. They must make the cause of peace the object of general consultation and seek by every means in their power to establish a union of the nations of the world. They must conclude a binding treaty and establish a covenant, the provisions of which shall be sound, inviolable, and definite. They must proclaim it to all the world and obtain it for it the sanction of the whole human race. So this is the pact, this covenant, this supreme and noble undertaking, the real source of the peace and well-being of the world, should be regarded as sacred by all that dwell on earth. All the forces of humanity must be mobilized to ensure the stability and permanence of this most great covenant. In this all-embracing pact, the limits and frontiers of each and every nation should be clearly fixed. The principles underlying the relations of government towards one another definitely laid down, and all international agreements and obligations ascertained. In like manner, the size of the armaments of every government should be strictly limited. Or if the preparations for war and the military forces of any nation should be allowed to increase, they will rouse the suspicion of others. And finally, he says, the fundamental principle underlying this solemn pact should be so fixed that if any government later violate any one of its provisions, all the governments collectively on earth should arise to reduce it to utter submission. Nay, the human race as a whole should resolve with every power at its disposal to destroy that government. Should this greatest of all remedies be applied to the sick body of the world, it will assuredly recover, the world will recover from its ills and will remain eternally safe and secure. This is the principle of selective security that Baha'u'llah talks about at great length. So, what will this secular commonwealth look like? This is very important. There is a portion in the writings of Shoghi Effendi in his book, The World Order of Baha'u'llah, which he wrote in 1938. Where he describes what that secular government will be. Now, many Baha'is reading that work mistakenly infer that that's the world government that will occur during the lesser peace. Not so. He says the commonwealth of the lesser peace will be entirely secular, not caused by Baha'is or the Baha'i faith or by Baha'u'llah directly, but it will be caused out of necessity. What Irbuz described as some impetus that will cause us out of necessity to collaborate. He says, as far as we can visualize it, in other words, he said, this isn't exactly how it may be, but if we can guess what it will be like, it'll be like this. You will have four bodies within this organization of the secular government, most probably. You will have a world legislature, which will be the trustees of the whole of mankind. These would be elected representatives from all the peoples of the world. You'll have a world executive to carry out the decisions arrived at by the World Commonwealth. You will have a world tribunal that will adjudicate and deliver its compulsory and final verdict in all disputes that may arise from any indecision or any lack of common agreement or consensus. And finally, you will have that force that will be a military force, but from the collection of contributors from all the nations of the world that will ensure that the decisions of this tribunal are carried out. That's what it will most likely be like. Now, that's not the Baha'i concept of the most great peace or the world government that Baha'u'llah describes. This is a likely arrangement that the lesser peace will constitute. What will bring about such a pact then? In other words, what I just described here is pretty much what Woodrow Wilson wanted with the League of Nations, what the United Nations wanted, and so on. So the desire to have it, even the motivations, such as the First World War, the Second World War, they weren't sufficient to bring about such a pact. But so what will bring about such a pact? Well, you have, again, the same chart, the heroic age, the formative age. The administrative order of the Baha'i faith is complete in 1963. That means the foundation of the institution, which will in the future be the paradigm for the golden age, is established. And then you will, at some point, we have the institute process, which we're currently using here in 2021. But what will cause the lesser peace will be some sort of ordeal. Now, it may not be one single event. It may be a series of events. You could say to a certain extent, we are going through and have been going through this ordeal. And yet there is distinct nature to this ordeal that distinguishes it from any other catastrophe we have endured as a collective human race on this planet. Here's a quote, the first paragraph of The Promised Day Has Come by Shoghi Effendi, where he quotes from Baha'u'llah, "A tempest unprecedented in its violence." Notice 1941, right at the beginning of World War II. So people, Baha'is reading this might have thought during that war that, well, this is it. Unpredictable in its course, catastrophic in its immediate effects, unimaginably glorious in its ultimate consequences, is at present sweeping the face of the earth. Its driving power is remorselessly gaining in range and momentum. Its cleansing force, however much detected, is increasing with every passing day. Humanity, gripped in the clutches of its devastating power, is smitten by the evidences of its resistless fury. It can neither perceive its origin, nor probe its significance, nor discern its outcome. Now, of course, what's ultimately important in this is the fact that it says unimaginably glorious in its ultimate consequence. That goes back to what I said when we were looking at the concepts of history, that we have a happy ending to our history. This is something that no other religion has professed or explained. And this is what Baha'u'llah says will happen, that ordeal will bring about the lesser peace, and that the lesser peace will evolve over time to bring about a most great peace. In other words, all that we're going through and will go through is but setting the stage for the day of days, the time of the end, the last judgment. All of the religions of the past have alluded to them. So when will this event occur, this ordeal? I quote from Matthew here, where he's referring to, that is, Christ is referring to when he will return, or when the coming of the Son of Man will be. And he says, no one knows when that will occur, not even the Son. In other words, I myself don't know. The Father himself will decide when it's the appropriate time. Well, what about the guardian? Did he know? Because he was, Baha'is believe, infallible in his guidance. And he himself says, we have no indication of exactly what nature the apocalyptic evil will be. It might be another war, but as students of our Baha'i writings, it is clear that the longer the divine physician, Baha'u'llah, is withheld from healing the ill of the world, the more severe will be the crisis and the more terrible the sufferings of the patient. In other words, this is encouraging Baha'is to teach these concepts of world government and beginning at the community level to the people of the world, because the extent to which we do this is the extent to which that ordeal will be lessened. But he says clearly it's not the Second World War. Well, when does he say that? In 1954. So this is 9 years after the ending of the Second World War. And what does he say? Indeed, a foretaste of the devastation which this consuming fire, this ordeal, will wreak upon the world, and with which it will lay waste the cities and nations participating in this tragic world-engulfing contest, has been afforded by the last World War, making the second stage in the global havoc which humanity, forgetful of its God and heedless of the clear warnings uttered by his appointed messenger for this day, must, alas, inevitably experience. Now, so the last World War in 1954 was the Second World War. The House of Justice, whose decisions are infallible, says the following: we are instructed to say, because they were asked about this often, and in the years of the 1970s and 80s, Baha'is became obsessed with, when will this occur? Is it about to occur? And so they responded very specifically. We are instructed to say that although there's every reason to expect the world will experience travails and testing as never before, we do not know what form these, that should not be, we do not know what form these upheavals will take, when exactly they will come, how severe they will be, how long they will last. And in fact, if we knew, we would tell you we don't know. And then they went on to say, speculation about it is fruitless, so stop dwelling on it. O peoples of the world, know ye verily that an unforeseen calamity followeth you. This is quoting from Baha'u'llah. And grievous retribution awaited you. Think not that which you have committed hath been effaced in my sight. Therefore, it considers that it would be fruitless to attempt to foresee the time or the nature of a calamity which Baha'u'llah himself said was unforeseen. So that's one of the characteristics of this ordeal, is we won't foresee it. So if we think we know what it is, then we're probably wrong. That's my thought anyway. And so before that, during the 70s, when all of this was being talked about so fiercely because of the polarization of governments, the threat of nuclear holocaust and so forth, the House of Justice wrote several times about this. The House of Justice points out that calamities have been and are occurring and will continue to happen until mankind has been chastened sufficiently to accept the manifestation for this day. Abdu'l-Baha anticipated that the lesser peace could be established before the end of the 20th century. However, Baha'is should not be diverted from the work of the cause by the fear of catastrophes, but should try to understand why they occur. The beloved guardian in innumerable places has explained the reasons for these occurrences, and since they happen from time to time, as explained above, we should not be concerned as to when they occur. Well, there were many Baha'is, and maybe there still are some, I don't get around as much as I used to, so I don't know what the talk is among the vast majority of Baha'is. But many thought it had already occurred. And I heard that said during, from the time I became a Baha'i in 1959, this is it. This is the U-2 flyover by Gary Powers. That was it. The Cuban Missile Crisis was it. Everything that was occurring was it. Well, we had in the First World War the League of Nations that thought that that was the war to end all wars, and so they created a league that they thought could construct such a pact. But instead, they created the very basis for the Second World War by imposing terrible constraints on the losers of that war. As a result, you had underway almost as soon as it was over the ingredients for the onset of the Second World War. Such things as, of course, the recession or the depression of 1929 and the buildup of nationalism, extreme nationalism, and particularly in Italy and Germany. And so you had the Second World War, and afterwards the United Nations, which again was the same idea, to create a universal body with the sufficient power to put down any incursion by one nation against another. And that concept worked. You had a United Nations force, the same thing that Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Baha talk about was needed, a world policing force. And so you had many nations working to put down the incursion of North Korea, which intruded into South Korea, causing the Korean conflict, as it was called. It was a war. Same thing happened in Kuwait to a lesser degree, and that is the first President Bush did not invade or did not defend Kuwait and attack Iraq until he had other nations agreeing to participate. And if you'll remember, excuse me, I went ahead too far, that when the other nations said we must commit to ending this at a certain point, he ended it, even though we had the capacity to wipe out the Revolutionary Guard as they were going back to Baghdad. So the Gulf War and the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 seemed like, okay, this is it. We're going to have world peace now. And so you had for about 10 years a wonderful sense of globalism. It was as if that we might be able to avoid, I know many Baha'is felt this, I hoped it myself, that we might avoid that ordeal, that we might sort of gently step into this lesser peace. And you had President Bush talking about a new world order, and Baha'is, when he said that, were so pleased and so happy, because here was the President of the United States. The Soviet Union had had broken into nation states. We had the possibility of a world pact. So you had a period of great hope. Global economy arose, global infrastructure, especially with the rise of the internet and so forth. Then I jokingly say you had a McDonald's in every country, a global Disney World and Starbucks. I remember a Baha'i visiting Paris and going to McDonald's and said, surely the lesser peace was at hand. I won't say who that was. A very respected scholar, however, I will say. It wasn't I. That all was undone by the things that occurred afterward, and that was the strife in Syria, the vast immigration, which at first caused nations to welcome these immigrants. And oh yes, let's open up our borders, and yes, everything's fine. And suddenly they realized the turmoil and cost of this, And so you had all the nations suddenly retrenching themselves back into nationalism. And of course, in the United States, this occurred very strikingly with the election of President Trump, but it occurred in most every other country as well, the same sort of nationalism, this country first. Now we have the pandemic. Could this be it? Well, it has certain characteristics that make it quite unique and quite interesting. You even have some world leaders calling for a world federation of governments to deal with it. Certainly the World Health Organization is calling for a unification of effort. Will this be the crisis that galvanizes us into the collective will and bring about the lesser peace? As I said, if it's unforeseen, then, and we think this is it, then it's probably not it. So to a certain extent, I've always felt if we have to ask if this is it, it's not it. Because to me, the writings seem to make clear that you won't have to ask if this is the ordeal that will force us to get together. And yet it could still evolve into that because we haven't defeated it yet. It may be coupled with something else. It could be part of that process. It is a process that has been in motion for decades. It's each erroneous step backwards, each erroneous or backward step by world leaders contributes to the impetus that will hasten such an ordeal. And all we do to create vital spiritual and autonomous communities, though, as Baha'is, we are told, as I've already read, will lessen the impact of whatever it is. And that's very important. And that is right now, we can't meet together with other people in our community. We have to wear masks, keep our distance, and look at what we're doing right this moment. We're having a fireside, a discussion about this very thing. We are forming virtual communities that but we couldn't have this if we hadn't already created the literal communities that are particularly called for by the Institute process, which says you can't build this lesser peace from the top down. It's got to be from the ground up. So, it is unforeseen, world engulfing, a solution that clearly requires global collaboration, that clearly demonstrates the failings of the past, particularly of nationalism. This pandemic is not the tyranny of a person or a nation or a group. That's something that makes it interesting. We don't have anyone to blame. It seems to be urging leaders of thought to consider a world federation of governments for both the exigencies of this world crisis and also as the only path to a sort of world justice. Now I'm going to end with what two particular world leaders have said, well, three really. And they're kind of interesting because you get these observations from people usually who are not in government and therefore at the present time, and therefore constrained by the party politics that they're involved in. So here's the former Prime Minister of England, Gordon Brown. And this is a description of what he said about 4 months ago. Gordon Brown has urged world leaders to create a temporary form of global government to tackle the twin medical and economic crises caused by COVID-19 pandemic. The former Labour Prime Minister, who was at the center of the international efforts to tackle the impact of the near meltdown of the banks in 2008, which was also almost the ordeal. A lot of people thought that was the ordeal, and it almost was. Said there was a need for a task force involving world leaders, health experts, and the heads of the international organizations that would have executive powers to coordinate the response. Excuse me 1 second, I'm going to take a drink. Now, I'm going to read you a longer passage from a very unexpected former world leader, and it's very close to the Baha'i concept of the lesser peace. Who makes this observation? I'll let you guess. And this is a quote from him, so you know it's a he. During the first months of this year, this was made in April, we have seen once again how fragile is our global world, how great the danger of sliding into chaos. The COVID-19 pandemic is facing all countries with a common threat, and no country can cope with it alone. The immediate challenge today is to defeat this new vicious enemy. But even today, we need to start thinking about life after it retreats. Many are now saying the world will never be the same. But what will it be like? That depends on what lessons will be learned. I recall how in the mid-1980s we addressed the nuclear threat. The breakthrough came when we understood that it is our common enemy, a threat to all of us. The leaders of the Soviet Union and the US declared that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Then came Reykjavik, the first treaties eliminating nuclear weapons. But even though by now 85% of those arsenals have been destroyed, the threat is still there. Yet other global challenges remain and have become even more urgent. I put the even in there because I think these are extremely urgent. Poverty and inequality, the degradation of the environment, the depletion of the earth and the oceans, the migration crisis, and now a grim reminder of another threat, diseases and epidemics that in a global interconnected world can spread with unprecedented speed. So the very thing that puts us together, that makes us one family, one human family, is also what enables this disease to spread with such rapidity that we can't isolate our problems from those of anyone else, nor do the same holds true for all those problems. This is the final part of the statement. The response to this new challenge cannot be purely national. While it is the national governments that now bear the brunt of making difficult choices, decisions will have to be made by the entire world community. What we urgently need now is a rethinking of the entire concept of security. Even after the end of the Cold War, it has been envisioned mostly in military terms. Over the past few years, all we've been hearing is talk about weapons, missiles, and airstrikes. This year, the world has already been on the brink of clashes that could involve great powers, with serious hostilities in Iran, Iraq, and Syria. And though the participants eventually stepped back, it was the same dangerous and reckless policy of brinksmanship. Is it not clear by now that wars and the arms race cannot solve today's global problems? War is a sign of defeat, a failure of policies. The overriding goal, excuse me, I thought that was the last page. This is the last page of my talk. The overriding goal must be human security, providing food, water, and a clean environment, and caring for the peoples for people's health. To achieve it, we need to develop strategies, make preparations, plan and create reserves. But all efforts will fail if governments continue to waste money by fueling the arms race. I'll never tire of repeating. We need to demilitarize world affairs, international politics, and political thinking. To address this at the highest international level, I am calling on world leaders to convene an emergency special session of the UN General Assembly to be held as soon as the situation is stabilized. It should be about nothing less than revising the entire global agenda. Specifically, I call upon them to cut military spending by 10 to 15%. Well, where did I go? Oh, there it is. This is the least they should do now as a first step towards a conscientious a new consciousness. Sorry, my voice is going. A new civilization. That's the end of Mikhail Gorbachev, former prime minister of the Soviet Union, the last prime minister of the Soviet Union.
Oh my God.
Then we finally have the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. The world is at a breaking point. This pandemic has been likened to an X-ray. This is a beautiful image, revealing fractures in the fragile skeleton of the societies we have built. It is exposing fallacies and falsehoods everywhere. The lie that free markets can deliver health care for all, the fiction that unpaid care work is not work, the delusion that we live in a post-racist world, the myth that we are all in the same boat. Because while we are all floating in the same sea, it's clear that some are in super yachts while others are clinging to the floating debris. So, the logic of the Institute process I go at here, but most of you are probably aware of that. If you want, when we get to the Q&A, I can get back to that. It's basically why I feel the Institute process, as foreseen 20 years ago when it was begun, really 24 years ago when it was begun by the House of Justice, understood that you cannot mandate the lesser peace from the top down. You've got to build a structure that will facilitate and embrace the fallen limbs of humanity once this ordeal occurs. And now we see with this virtual fireside exactly what they had in mind. So I have a talk to give on the transition from the lesser peace to the most great peace, because there's so much in the writings about how that will occur stage by stage. And that's what the stage, when I use the word stages at the beginning of the talk, that's what the stage of establishment is about. And I can tell you what that is later if you want. Okay, I'm gonna take a drink. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will let the questions come in from Alex, who will read them to me.
Thank you, Dr. Hatcher. That was a tremendous talk, and I can, via the chat, we're already getting direct messages saying, "Can we get a recording of this? When can we watch it again? When can we see the PowerPoint slides directly?" So, folks are certainly receiving the presentation very well.
Did you record this?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, you can get the recording from Alex and crew. And I have already sent him the PowerPoint, and he's welcome to distribute it to whomever would like to have it.
Perfect. That answers actually the first question, which is, can we distribute the PowerPoint? So I'll go ahead and when I'm not talking, I will put it into the chat. So for those that would like to download it just momentarily, I will go ahead and
do that, or just put it online. I'll tell you what, if you will convey to everyone, if I have a website, it's simply johnshatcher.com, and I will post this talk on that website too, if for any reason you don't get it tonight. All right. I have various other talks that are free to download from that too. Various talks and also various PowerPoints. Okay, let's go.
So the first question is actually just, and well, let me stop here. And for those folks that do have questions, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment and typing them into the chat, or you can send them to me directly if you're the bashful type. I'll go ahead and read them out. And the first question that has come in is a procedural one. If we wouldn't mind doubling back to one of your last slides there and just introducing a little bit, we do have some new friends with us that haven't heard about the Institute process and are not familiar with it. If you could just talk from a high level, what is that process? What does the Institute process refer to? And how and why would somebody get involved with it?
The Institute, well, I was going to go back to the slide, but let me just speak about it. I see you going to the slide, aren't you? The Institute process is a very generic name given to a very multi-layered and complex process by which the, well, first of all, let me begin from the top down. I'll tell you, I have a slide that I can share with all of you if you will. I'm trying to think of the best way to get it to you, but it shows the whole structure of the Institute in relation to the administrative order of the Baha'i Faith. But let me put it as simply as I can verbally, and then I will send the slide to Alex, who can then share it with everyone who signed in tonight. I'll tell you this, the slide is it's in my book, which is also on my website, where you can buy it and you can read about the book, called God's Plan for Planet Earth and for Your Neighborhood. That book, which is available through Amazon, and it's also described on my website, in it is a chart of how the Institute process came into being and how it's literally a graph of what it looks like. The Baha'i Faith, as designed by Baha'u'llah and as refined by Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi, has 3 layers of administration. It has at the local level, the local spiritual assembly, which in the future will be called the local house of justice. That's obviously to create governance for the local community, and it currently does. It performs marriages, does funerals, governs the affairs of the local Baha'i community. And each local Baha'i community has a specified legal jurisdiction. You then have the intermediary level called the national spiritual assemblies, though they can be territorial. They will in the future be called secondary houses of justice, and they will be administrative bodies, and already are, that govern the affairs of the Baha'is within, say, the United States, and various territories have their own national assemblies. So Alaska has its own national assembly, and so on. And then you have the supreme institution of the Baha'i Faith called the Universal House of Justice. That's a 9-membered body that resides at the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel, which is the world center of the Baha'i Faith. And they govern the affairs of the Baha'i community as a whole. Now, I don't want to get into a lengthy discussion. Suffice it to say that each of these bodies at present consists of 9 individuals who are elected by plurality vote without nomination or electioneering. There's no partisan politics in the Baha'i Faith, and indeed, Baha'is are forbidden to participate in partisan politics. They are exhorted to, let me put it that way. So what is the Institute process? Beginning around the year 2000, the House of Justice divided the global Baha'i community into clusters, and that is geographical districts that were related to one another. So, for example, in Maryland, where you are, you might be in a cluster that connects you to Alexandria, Virginia, or Washington, or whatever. I don't know what your cluster design is. So I'm in a cluster, for example, that's in central, my cluster is the Tampa Bay area cluster, which consists of about 4 counties and so on. And the whole purpose of this is teaching. It's not administrative, it's teaching. And so there's a cluster coordinating committee that is appointed, and that committee consists of organizing education, devotions, the educational level consists of both literal and spiritual education for secular education and spiritual education, for children, for junior youth, and study circles for adults. And these courses are extremely well organized and extremely sophisticated. They begin very simply and with each course become more and more sophisticated and inclusive. So the institute process is the institution of overseeing these courses, helping people to participate in these courses, of seeing that each community has its own devotions, children's classes, what am I leaving out? There's 4 core activities. I'm missing one. Devotionals, study circles.
Junior youth and children's.
Junior youth animation, right, thank you. So anyway, the institute process is simply that these courses are available all over the world. They are translated into every language that we can so far. And it's the idea of building community. So, and not just the Baha'i community, but the Baha'is are, consider everyone within their literal community part of their community. So it's not specifically limited to Baha'i study or Baha'i teachings. It is the idea that to embrace the world in order to bring about change, you've got to begin at the grassroots level, and the smallest unit of that process has to be the local community. So it's about building community and the tools with which to do it. And I talk too much, but that's what you get when you've been a teacher for 50 years or so. A lot of words, a lot of words.
Thank you. We have 2 more and I think a 3rd question coming. The next question is, greatest suffering is not seen yet in the pandemic. If it should last many years, let's say 7 to 21 years, would we then think it's the transition to the lesser peace?
Well, as I said, we'll know we have the lesser peace, or we know we are about to have the lesser peace, when that pact is devised. Both Baha'u'llah in the Loy Maqsood and Abu Baha in the Secret of Divine Civilization says, in order to have the lesser peace, you've got to have the pact. In order to have the pact, you've got to have a meeting of the world leaders, the leaders of every nation. They have to come together. In order to come together, they have to see that there's no way to survive without doing that. Obviously, some world leaders are seeing that now. I can, so you're asking me to foresee what is unforeseen. I don't foresee it any more than you. I have no clue. I have no idea. It could be this plus, let me put it this way. As I said, since I became a Baha'i so long ago, 60 years ago, everything that we have pushed the envelope so many ways in the world. We thought it was going to be a nuclear war, and then we seemed to get control of that. We thought it was going to be pollution. We thought it was going to be, this, that. Our oceans are filled with plastic. Our air is polluted. Our water is polluted. We have pushed the envelope in so many ways that you're going to have a domino effect at some point. And it could be that this pandemic is the first little block on that domino that will push all these others. I don't know. I don't know. You could, the writings are very specific If you'll read in the Citadel of Faith, the letters of the Guardian, he talks about blood running in the street because of racial conflict. He says, until racial conflict in the United States is resolved, the United States will not have peace. So, I mean, you've got disparity of economy, which is going rapidly. That could bring about a revolution. Who knows what it could be? I suspect it will be a confluence. If it's not a confluence of all these things, it may be one thing that triggers and makes it bear before us all these other problems. I'll say one more thing, and then I can answer any specific questions you have about that, because I could give a talk on this at the drop of a hat. I was asked when I was given, this kind of an interesting anecdote for me. I was doing a talk in Hollywood, and a person asked, how will this world unity come about? I don't see any way it will happen. And I said, well, some calamitous event. I said, for example, and I knew this because I'd seen the weather forecast when I left Florida the evening before, that Hurricane Katrina was heading, was just off the coast of New Orleans. And I said, you don't know this because you're out here in California and you don't pay much attention to hurricanes, but I can tell you that this time tomorrow, New Orleans will never be the same again. That's how quickly it can occur. And I said, I'll tell you something else. Have the electricity shut off. How many days do you think it would take before Los Angeles and the greater Los Angeles area would be chaos? And that's all I had to say. Now, ironically, the next day, a squirrel hit a breaker and the electricity in Los Angeles went off. It wasn't off very long, but I would have liked to have been with that guy when it happened. But I'm very serious about that. If you have the electrical grid go down, everything goes. Everything goes. And it can go for 1,000 different reasons. You know, so could be something as simple as that.
Thank you. Our next question, and I do want to be sensitive on time here, so we'll take one more and then do a quick time check. The next question is, as we keep going through social or political ups and downs, there's always a temptation and desire to react, participate, and become active in those events or activities. In today's highly charged moment, how far can we participate or be active without being considered political participation or partisan?
This is a very good question, and it came up in a study circle my wife was doing on, I think, book 10. Oh, Bobby Thaggart was there. Oh, how wonderful. You participate as much as you can without aligning yourself with a party. The problem with party politics is that you are being coerced to choose someone because they belong to a party. And the whole Baha'i concept of election is not just for Baha'i elections, but it will ultimately be the means by which elections should be held. I guess the best example is a letter we got just a week ago from the National Spiritual Assembly exhorting all Baha'is to call or write to their congressmen and senators to support a bill condemning the abuse of Baha'is in Iran. Now, that wasn't partisan. That was a bill to help to uphold the condemnation of the treatment of Baha'is. So it was political, but it wasn't partisan. You see, we weren't voting for one person, we were voting for an idea. So to the extent that you can, you do it. I know Baha'is who participated in the recent protests. Many of them did, and Black Lives Matter. I know a lot of them did that. I guess the advice that is most useful was the same advice we got back in the early 60s when the Baha'is were deciding whether to go down with the Freedom Riders to Mississippi and register voters. And the advice we got was, and the same advice we got when the Vietnam moratoriums were going on. You may do whatever you think is best as long as it's not partisan and as long as you don't represent yourself as representing the Baha'i faith. You are not a representative of the Baha'i, you're representing your view. And so you have that freedom to do that in this country. Other countries you don't. So you take advantage of that freedom.
Thank you. And we have just two more questions here to wrap up the evening. The first question is, the communities of our faith need to take action to work toward the oneness of humanity. What are some steps that can be taken to reach this goal of oneness and then eventually the lesser peace? And of course, teaching may be the first start.
The single most important thing Baha'is can do is participate in, is to do exactly what the House of Justice exhorts us to do and the National Spiritual Assembly exhorts us to do on a monthly basis, the House of Justice at least on an annual basis, and that is participate in the Institute process, all right, which involves teaching, which involves learning, which involves integrating into your community of Baha'is, or integrating yourself into your community. So you form, you form communities. There are places in the world where the Baha'i community is the only government there is. These are remote villages where all of the villages are Baha'is, and the governing agency of that village is the Baha'i local spiritual assembly. But what can we do in our diverse environments that we have in the United States and elsewhere? You begin at the local level, and you begin by constructing community in every aspect of what that means. That includes helping, well, for example, my wife is helping direct a junior youth animation program. They just made cards for assisted living facilities to the individuals in those facilities. Small gesture, but it not only had an incredible effect on the hearts of those people in that assisted living facility, it had an amazing effect on the youth, the junior youth who participated in it. So, and by the way, those junior youth are not Baha'is. They're just the local individuals.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure.
And our last question for the evening is, I'll read the text. It's, thank you for a stimulating and provocative presentation. The common theme appears to be the positive, effective reaction on a calamity. So far, this has required world leaders who are willing to join together. We currently appear to be in a wave of nationalistic and authoritarian world leaders compared to the 1990s and Eve a decade ago. Would we need to wait until these leaders are replaced before we could launch toward the lesser peace? Or do you think this can arise from a more grassroots origin, despite the presence of such leaders?
Well, again, obviously I can't speak authoritatively, and I presume the question is framed in such a way that it just wants, what do I think? So I'll tell you what I think. I think in no wise will it come from the grassroots. And I think that the world leaders will come together when they have absolutely no alternative but to do so. And so that's why the ordeal, that's why this pandemic is working. Well, you saw what Gorbachev said, you saw what Brown said. They see this as the only solution. But if we get a vaccine and cure that, well, that one went away too. I don't, whatever it is, whether it's a sequence of events, well, we're obviously in a sequence of events. Now we see yet another dilemma. You had the threat of nuclear holocaust, the threat of pollution, polluting the oceans, the widening gulf economically. Well, here's yet another one, pandemics. Add that to the list, or maybe it's it. I suspect there will be one thing that will cause all of these dominoes to show us that, oh my gosh, without electricity, we're no better off than people. In fact, we're less well off than people living without electricity in villages who probably won't feel the effects of this so much. And that's something that's always tickled me, or not tickled me, but amazed me, is that the people who will be the hardest hit by this and are being the hardest hit are the people who are most dependent on the most sophisticated parts of our mechanized society. The people who are less affected are those who live the simplest lives because they have less to lose. But at any rate, take that for what it's worth.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Asher. I don't know how to thank you, really.
I think you just did.
No. That's very good because it's coming from the bottom of my heart. And I'm thanking all the audience for joining us tonight, really, because without audience, these things would not be possible. And that's wonderful, really. The number of the people that they join speaks for itself. I'm really delighted. And I wish you the best and hope to see you back in this fireside.
I'll be happy to do it.
Without much ado, Rebecca is going to say the final prayer, closing prayer, and then Alex will unmute everybody and we finish the night. Thank you so much. Again, I have to thank also Alex for such a mastery job that he is doing. My hat, or I don't have a hat, but goes for you. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Rebecca. Rebecca, are you there? Yes, Rebecca.
Okay, good. The host wasn't letting me unmute myself, so sorry.
Right when he was complimenting me, yeah, that's when I slip up.
Thank you.
Before you say prayer, again, I should thank Dr. Banik for wonderful prayer that he said for us. I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. Rebecca.
This is a prayer by the Bab. O Lord, enable all the peoples of the earth to gain admittance into the paradise of thy faith, so that no created being may remain beyond the bounds of thy good pleasure. From time immemorial, thou hast been potent to do what pleaseth thee, and transcendent above whatsoever thou desirest.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Alex, we are ready to. Wow.
All right. Everybody should now be able to unmute themselves.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
This was an outstanding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great talk, Dr. Hatcher. Enjoyed it very much. Very informative.
Dr. Mohajer, good to see you.
Bye, Keaton.
Dr. Mohajer, good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nasir and Alex.
Hey, Mickey. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Maddie.
That is wonderful, really.
Thank you to everybody for an inspiring evening.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
You all.
Good to see you, Pat.
What do you say?
Is the lady from Spain still here?
Tim, it's good to see you.
Nice seeing you again.
That's wonderful, really. Truly.
All right. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Yes, the Hudi from Spain is still here.
Are you from
Yeah,
Spain?
my dear Hudi is still here from Spain.
¿Qué parte de España vive?
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
No, Jamaica. Soy jamaiquino. Lo siento.
Wow. That is fantastic.
Hace muchos años estaba un estudiante en Madrid.
Can you tell us how we can get this speech? From where again? One more time.
Perdóname.
Alex.
Sorry, I missed it.
Can we get this speech download from somewhere?
Oh, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
The PowerPoint, yeah. Now the recording.
I think the recording, yes. I think doctor's website.
Oh, okay, his website. Okay.
Yep, and I'll put the website back there. But you're still part of the recording right now, so we are in real time.
Oh, so we should be nice then.
Dr. Hatcher, Linda Cavlin Popoff sends her best wishes.
Who does?
Linda Cavlin Popoff, the founder of the Virtues Project.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for excellent and inspiring talk. Alex, thank you for taking on the facilitation. Dr. B, thank you for giving me the week off.
Thank you.
Thank you,
and
everyone.
Dr. B, so uplifting.
Dr. Hatcher, please give our love to your wife also.
Shabbat shalom. There.
Dr. Hatcher again. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Hi, good night. Hi, how are you?
Good night.
Good to see you. Bye.
Thank you, doctor. Good seeing you.
Nice to see
Dr.
you.
B, you got some chicken and rice on your, just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
We missed that.
I don't know how to get out.
Can't wait.
Chicken. The time will come. Don't worry.
Yes.
Back or out?
A lesser piece comes or chicken and rice. One.
الان قناعت غير خانوم.
Hello, my dear. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Hi,
Alex, I wish I had half of your ability in the computer.
Excellent. Bertrand,
Excellent job,
have a good weekend.
Don't worry.
Take care.
All right, aloha pa, bye, friends.
Yeah, I'm on a call.
Aloha, pa. Have a wonderful.
You want to get out?
Yeah.
I don't want to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
We're going to be dancing after this.
See you next week.
As soon as you leave, we're dancing. We're starting the music and everything.
Oh my God. Mickey and Madeline. It's so good to see you.
Yes.